Hello students, welcome again. Students, in our previous video lectures, we discussed one of the most important essays written by Roland Barthes, The Death of the Author. In another video, I also discussed Roland Barthes as an important critique of the reader response theory. Today, we want to discuss this essay, What is Criticism, written by Roland Barthes. So, now let's begin. See, let me tell you who this Roland Barthes is. Roland Barthes was an important French critic. He lived in France. Okay, he was a great philosopher, a great scholar of language and literary studies, and he contributed in the second half of the 20th century. Okay, he was one of the most influential thinkers of this 20th century, and his ideas have been accepted widely all around the world in different fields, not only in literature but in cultural studies, in anthropology, in sociology. Everywhere, Roland Barthes' concepts, ideas have been accepted widely by the scholars of different fields. Okay, now Roland Barthes, as I told you, he contributed in the second half of the 20th century, so he falls into the category of post-structuralist critiques. Okay, because we know that post-structuralism begins after 1960s. Okay, 1960s onwards, you have this new approach to literature, that is the approach of post-structuralism. Now, Roland Barthes, he reacted against structuralism. He also reacted against the new critics who lived during the first half of the 20th century. Okay, Barthes has argued that the literary text should be understood as a complex system of signs and symbols. Okay, and he believed that these texts, which are actually made of signs and symbols, these signs and symbols, they give birth to multiple meanings. Okay, so he rejected the structuralist idea. What was structuralist idea? The structuralist idea was that there is one fixed meaning from one particular text, but in post structuralism we have a new idea of multiplicity of meaning, which has been given by Roland Barthes. Before we discuss his essay, What is Criticism, let me tell you about some major works written by Roland Barthes. Okay, number one, we have Writing Degree Zero, which was published in 1953. Okay, here he has argued that language is a complex system of signs and symbols, and these signs and symbols give birth to multiple meanings. Okay, so this idea is found in this work. Another important work written by Roland Barthes is Mythology, published in 1957. Here he has analyzed and deconstructed various cultural myths and symbols. Okay, so he has worked on mythology, various ancient myths, and he has tried to interpret the ancient myth in the light of 20th century. Okay, in this book he has argued that myths are not just simple stories. They are not simple stories told by our forefathers. Okay, they are complex constructs, cultural constructs, and they give us, some dominant social ideologies and power structures of the then time. So that idea is presented there. Number three, he also wrote S Oblique Zed. Now this is a very tricky title, okay, which was published in 1970, and Balzac was one of the most important French prose writer, and he has written Saracen. Saracen is a novella. Novella is what? A short form of novel, a very short novel. Okay, so in this work, as Oblique Zed, Roland Barthes has tried to use structuralist method to deconstruct the text and reveal the complex web of signification, and he tries to prove how we can deconstruct a particular text which was written in the earlier times. Number 4, he has also written The Pleasure of the Text, published in 1973. Here he has explored the relationship between the language and desire, and he argues that the text should be understood not as a fixed stable object. Text is not an fixed object, okay, it is a dynamic thing, because the text to me is one thing, and the same text to you is something else, okay. So multiple meanings come because there are multiple readers. Roland Barthes by Roland Barthes. Now this is again a kind of experimental autobiography written by Roland Barthes and published in 1975. So all in all, these are the 5 important works. Apart from this, his major works also include the Elements of Semiology, critical essays published in 1964, the Fashion System 1967, and all such works. Okay, but now let's come to the main point of the discussion of the essay. What is criticism? And now this essay, which is again a very important essay, widely acclaimed all across the globe by major critics of the 20th century. This essay was published in 1964 in the Minnesota Review. Okay, try to remember this title of the journal in which it was published and the date, 1964. Okay, this essay explores the role and function of literary criticism. What actually is criticism? That has been basically defined and discussed by Roland Barthes here, and here he presents a major argument that a more dynamic and engaged approach to literary analysis is a must in today's times, okay, and he tries to go beyond the traditional modes of interpretation. What are the major arguments presented here in this essay by Roland Barthes? Then remember, he says that criticism is not just about interpretation. Till 20th century, if you ask Matthew Arnold, if you ask John Dryden, you ask John Ruskin, all other 19th, 18th century critics, they believed that the primary function of criticism is to interpret a work of art. But he said that that is not the only function of criticism. He argues that these traditional modes of literary criticism have tended to focus on interpretation only, okay. However, he suggests that this approach is a limited approach. He says that criticism should be seen as a dynamic art, okay, and engaged process in which active engagement with the text is required. When you are criticizing a work of art as a critic, your active role as an artist and as a scientist must be there, and that is what criticism is. Number two, he argued that criticism is concerned with the reader's experience. It is ultimately up to the readers how they understand, how they receive the text. That is more important. Okay, he suggests that literary criticism should be less concerned with the author's intention and objective meaning. You see, the new critics of the first half of the 20th century, they gave more importance to the text. If you examine the 19th century criticism, they gave more importance to the author. But Roland Barthes rejects both these theories, both these ideas. Author is not important and the text is also not important. Okay, criticism, he believed, is a subjective matter. Subjective means personal. It is up to the readers how they understand, and from reader to reader there may be different interpretations of the same text. So kind of reader response theory has been presented here by Roland Barthes. Number three, he said that criticism should be open ended. Why? Because there is no one fixed meaning. There is one text, one poem is there, but one poem author must have thought about one meaning. Okay, but when this poem goes to different readers, there is a possibility that there are different interpretations. So we as critics, Roland Barthes said that we as critics must be open minded. Our criticism must be open. I mean, what you criticize, I mean, you find out one interpretation from one text, I should not go against your interpretation because it is your way of looking at the text. My way of looking at the text may be different. Okay, so we must be open minded. Number four, he said that criticism should be creative. Criticism is an art of, it is a creative art. He said that a good critic must himself be an artist first. Okay, as a critic we must have the heart of an artist and the mind of a scientist. Okay, so a good critic is a mixture of both a scientist and an artist. So when you are writing a criticism on any work of art, you must allow your creative art to work when you are doing that interpretation. So criticism with that creative approach can help to generate new meanings and new possibilities out of that text. So these are the 5 important arguments presented by Roland Barthes in his essay, What is Criticism? So now let me conclude this discussion by saying that this essay, What is Criticism, is an essay which criticizes, which goes against the traditional approaches to literary criticism. It rejects the author, number one. Number two, it rejects the text also, and it gives more importance to the reader. It gives more importance to the dynamic nature of the work of art. He believed that one work of art had one meaning during the 18th century, it has another meaning during the 19th century, yet another meaning during the 21st century. Okay, so time, culture, context, okay, all these combine together to change the meaning of one single text. Okay, so that was the main argument, and as a critic he believed we must be open minded to allow all these different multiplicity of meanings in criticism. Barthes suggests that criticism should be seen as a way of opening to new outlooks and of meaning and of enriching our understanding of the complex world of language and culture in which we are living. So these are some basic ideas which I wanted to express before you. Thank you for watching. Do share this video among all your classmates and friends. Thank you.